You are listening to Beyond the Checkbox, a podcast that focuses on leading strategies around bringing more mental well-being into the workplace. My name is Ryan Todd. I'm a psychiatrist and the CEO of Adversity. I'm sitting down with industry-leading changemakers to break down their process and see how they are going above and beyond for their workforce mental well-being. Good day, listeners. Welcome to Beyond the Checkbox. I'm your host, Ryan Todd. And lately, we've been talking to a lot of purpose-driven individuals, leaders in mental health, leaders in research, leaders in health companies. And today is no exception. We were able to get into the studio Breanne Everett, who's the CEO and founder of Orpyx. Orpyx is a very special high-growth company. What does Orpyx do? Well, they have a hardware-software solution that can detect pressure spots in a patient who has diabetes. Why is that important? Because if you have diabetes, it, to put it frankly, it sort of poisons your nerve endings, especially in your longest nerves and the periphery of your body. So what happens if you have diabetes and you can't feel the bottom of your foot? You sometimes get a pressure sore, and that pressure sore can turn into a wound, and that wound can turn into something a lot worse. And Orpyx works very hard with their technology to prevent all of that from happening. Breanne's got an incredible story. Medical doctor, started her plastic surgery residency, and then saw this patient group that she talks about that they were literally losing limbs, and she was on the plastic surgery team having to do surgery on these limbs. Very purpose-driven, passionate individual and a skilled and hardworking entrepreneur. We were very lucky to get her into the studio and spend some time with us. And so I hope you enjoy the podcast, and thanks for listening, as always, to Beyond the Checkbox. So you're based in Calgary?
Definitely, yes.
Okay, very cool. But you travel a lot. Like, it sounds like you're out and about, meeting the royal family.
This was a few years ago, yeah. Then there was a bit of a hiatus from travel for a couple of years there.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of trips to the Bay Area recently.
How do you find that? Is it a, first of all, why? And that's not like an accusatory, why are you going to the Bay Area? There's like a different tempo of development and innovation in Palo Alto, even though it's like a weird little suburb. I find you go down there and you just meet people who are working for like Tesla or Uber or like just these huge companies. Has that been your experience? Like, that's probably why you go down to the Valley.
Well, usually I'll tie travel to a specific event.
Yeah.
In the most recent scenario, there was an event put on by CELS, which is the Canadian Entrepreneurs in Life Sciences. So there are events related to that. And then it's just convenient to basically have whatever it is that I'm there for to tack other meetings onto.
Yeah.
So you almost have a bit of an advantage being from somewhere else, because
interesting.
You're coming in and saying, I'm going to be there in 3 weeks. It would be great in this window of days to connect up.
Yeah.
And then there's all sorts of organic introductions that happen. And there's such an innovation ecosystem of people really genuinely interested in networking and help network, that a lot gets done on those trips.
That's cool.
And I think being in the area once every 1 to 2 months, just generally speaking, is helpful for keeping those connections fresh, meeting new people, feeling like you're plugged into it. And then, so there's kind of like that part of it. And then the other part is just like exposing yourself to that level of intensity around technology and innovation that there's still, I mean, I know there's a lot of outflux from the Bay Area, but there still is no place like it in terms of just that culture of innovation.
Yeah.
So it's a cool place to be for that. And that I find quite invigorating.
Did you like staying in Calgary, being in Canada, was that purposeful? Or was it like, I'm from here, my family's here? Was it purposeful for the business, like to grow the business?
So initially, I would say it wasn't. I actually struggled for several years wondering if I had made the right decision to keep the business in Calgary.
Yeah.
We started here because this is where I'm from. I was going to school here. I was doing my residency here. And it wasn't a decision. It was just a result of where I had already been, and that was how the company came to be founded. But that was over 10 years ago now, and the world has changed so dramatically in that period of time. Calgary's changed dramatically in that period of time. So if you look back at that moment, this is even just pre-pandemic. We weren't doing Zoom calls. If you were doing a call with someone, it was a phone call. It made it way less real. Like half the calls I had, I can't remember now because there's no face to attach to a name. I think the same thing goes, like, people wouldn't have remembered the calls they had. It was just a very different thing. And if you were showing investment in a relationship, the way you showed that is by meeting someone in person. And so it was like, if I didn't make a trip to go see somebody, it was like I wasn't investing the time and energy into that. It's like, whether it be a partner, an investor, or whoever. And there was less of a willingness also for those companies to be investing outside of where they were geographically located.
Because you're not meeting people. You're not, like, there's a Bay Area ecosystem, a Northwest kind of ecosystem. And people were driving to pitches, and that was a pitch.
Well, and I got asked all the time, so are you going to move your company to San Francisco?
Really?
Yeah. I haven't been asked that question in probably 5 years.
That's interesting. We never got asked that, probably because they didn't see the potential for us. But it was kind of like we started a little bit before the pandemic.
Yeah.
But you heard, like, now that we're talking about it, you hear these famous stories. Like, who was the guy from Calgary who started, one of the founders of Uber?
Oh, Garrett Camp.
Yeah. But I don't think he was like, started Uber in Calgary and then moved down. But I think he was Calgarian, and he wanted to be a part of that ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were getting asked that all the time. Are you going to move down here?
All the time. I wasn't even getting asked it. I was also getting told, I won't even consider investing in your company unless you move. So that was a struggle, because even at, our size has grown pretty considerably since then, but even at the point where you have 10 people, your company is the people. Yeah. And so to think about a scenario of relocating, it's like, I either have to restart the company or convince that many people to move to the Bay Area. And it was very challenging at the time to fundraise. So I was questioning whether or not I was making the right decision about staying here. And over time, I've really come to realize that there are definite advantages of being here, and having the ability to pretty quickly fly in and out of other locations is really all you need, as long as you have an investor group that is, totally interested in investing outside of the physical location that they're in, which is almost all investors at this point. Like, they don't necessarily limit their funnel of opportunities to who they can walk to.
You sort of see funds that are like, oh, we're like sticking to the Pacific Northwest, or like East Coast, just sort of, but they're all like we have some investors from New York, and they're okay to go north or south or whatever. It's just it's like the opportunity now.
Oh yeah. Like then before, it wasn't just necessarily San Francisco. It was like, you need to get out of Canada. We don't invest in Canadian companies. And now it's almost like it's moving into like a badge of honor. Like, we invest in Canadian companies. We've done this before. We understand shred. We understand the value of doing R&D in Canada. And there's just a bit more of a move towards that. That was non-existent 6 years ago.
And do you feel like sometimes when people ask me, oh, how did this thing start? So there's a story of the genesis of adversity. And it that story gets tightened over time to be like a very two-liner story, which is true, but it doesn't represent the whole truth. Like, not even freaking close. And in some ways, we kind of stumbled into it, right? That's not what you tell investors. You're like, I woke up one morning and lightning bolt struck. And so what do you tell people when you say, hey, how did this start? Like, what's the story? What's the two-liner? And then what's the dirt story? What's the real fell into it story?
Okay. So I guess the very brief summary is that I was doing my residency.
That's true, by the way.
This is true.
I
Yeah,
can
you're. I like. I think
confirm
this is going to be a fact check, actually.
I confirm that is true.
Yeah, nobody has actually, like really gone to the school to verify that yet, but you could attest to the fact that I was doing my residency.
I can, and it's tough to get into a residency without first doing an MD. Like you have to really confabulate a lot of documentation.
Right. So, okay. So that's the other. So I did do my MD.
You went to medical school.
Legitimately completed my MD. Yeah. Started my residency in surgery.
Yeah.
And in the course of my residency, saw people who were losing their legs every day to diabetes. And realized that there was probably a much better way to manage this preventatively and give clinicians and patients the tools to do that in a way where they could kind of take control of their lives again and stop themselves from developing wounds and going on to require amputation.
Yeah.
And so that was in a nutshell what
that's good
drove the founding of it.
That's tight.
It's tight.
And it's true. That's like the
true.
better part of it. And it's kind of like the stuff you see in medicine as a doctor and a resident is just, it's wild. And like sort of think, oh yeah, I saw people losing their legs every day. Like as I don't want to say layperson or civilian, as someone who's not in healthcare, that sounds shocking. That's pretty shocking that people lose their legs to diabetes, but it's true. Like you see it all the time.
And it's not shocking to come from medicine and realize that, yes, that would be the case.
Yeah. It's absolutely wild. And plastics is people think of the cosmetic side of plastics. It's a pretty gritty surgical practice. Like you work with some of the most stomach churning presentations, including like person needs a leg amputation or even like a toe amputation. Did you do toes in plastics? That's podiatry, isn't it?
Yeah, podiatry, orthopedics, vascular.
Yeah,
more there, but because during the residency you're kind of doing cross-disciplinary training, there we did that.
There must have been a time when you were thinking, I'll just do this for a bit and then get back at it.
That was the idea.
And then this took off and it's grown and you've had a massive impact. Are you still thinking like that? Are you still thinking, I'll get back to it? That's such a tough juggle for physicians who become entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah. I think it's becoming easier over time. I was really tormented by it earlier on.
Yeah.
There's this thing in medicine where you almost feel like it isn't literally about building a resume, but there's something about just an expectation that you have this continuity in your academic life.
Sure.
And I remember when I thought I either need to really commit myself to this or I need to just be in the residency program and not try to take this on. I couldn't do the two in parallel. It was like impossible. And I thought because I was coming from a medical and a science background to this, getting some didactic training in business and actually doing an MBA was going to be something that would support what I was doing. And so I felt that doing that in parallel would not only help me develop for the purpose of the business, but it also just like create continuity.
You did an MBA?
I did an MBA. So I did 2 years of my residency and then I took a leave. It was an educational leave originally for 2 years to do the MBA.
And part of it's like, okay, that makes sense. They did further their education. It's common in residency to do like a master's or PhD. Exactly. And this is an MBA. Okay.
So that was the original idea. And I thought, well, this is ideal. I can just take a educational leave. And within that 2-year period of time, I should be able to build the company to the point of success and an exit. I'll exit and then I'll come back and it's like so laughable.
You were a delusional entrepreneur, like every entrepreneur I've ever met.
It was totally delusional in retrospect. But, and I think I also underappreciated what we would ultimately be building. Like,
and how do you know, right? Like everything evolves and changes and you grow. Like, I don't know, like I think it's common for entrepreneurs to say on the PowerPoint deck that they present to investors, like, we're going to be $1 billion company. And then it's, I think, more common for entrepreneurs to be like, I did not see this coming. like how many employees we have or how big it got or how difficult it was. Like you just don't know.
No, you don't. And you also, I mean, you've got this layer of what is happening in the world around you at the same time. Because if you rewind to when we started the company, the term digital health didn't exist. The term wearable didn't even exist. Like that seems like the oldest term now that has been used forever.
That was like,
it wasn't being used.
Pre-Garmin,
It was
pre-Apple Watch and all that stuff.
Yeah, pre-Fitbit even.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
Fitbit was just kind of starting.
Yeah.
So the thing that you can't necessarily predict is exactly how the technology in the world around you is going to adapt and how you fit into that. You can think about it a bit, but cloud computing was not a general thing. So the opportunities that even cloud computing as part of a digital offering, there's so many different areas you have to extrapolate to understand where the world is going to be at a specific point in time. And then where technology is going to be at, where batteries are going to be at, where sensors are going to be at, what you have to create yourself versus what's going to be around you, what the world is willing to consume versus what you're kind of pushing on people. And looking back now, the world was not ready to basically take up remote patient monitoring services or a digital device until this last 1 to 2 year period.
Really?
So that I think I overestimated how easy it was going to be to get into the market because it seemed like a very rational next step to bring care into the home in that way. And people need to be at a certain point and a certain set of experience needs to be had around the whole ecosystem and providers for that prescription to happen, for the support around the technology to happen. And that took time.
Had to be all these other things that you could not predict. No one could predict if those were going to be in place.
It felt predictable. The timeline was not predictable.
In a similar way, I imagine, as to like, we can predict that there will be driverless cars.
But when?
Yeah, and there's going to be like 20,000 things that happen in that milieu to like put that together.
Yeah.
But we can sit back and say, oh yeah, one day there's going to be driverless cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of like you look at these articles from the 50s where they're like, someday there will be a computer that you can hold in your hand and you could take calls on it. And
says a doctor smoking. I love those. If you want to help your baby, give them Camels. That's the baby cigarette of choice.
But it kind of seems shocking when you look at an old article like that. Yeah. But at the time, it's like, clearly that's the future, but when are you going to get there? And so many things have to happen to make that be a reality.
Do you have someone on your team that, like, I want to say visionary loosely because I think that's kind of an abused term. Is that someone on your team? Is that you? Is there team members who are thinking, yeah, in 2 years we got to build it because this is going to happen? Is that you, or is it somebody on your team who sees the future? Who's the seance of the group?
I actually think that it's really important that all the leaders are thinking in that way.
Yeah.
And now that the team is getting bigger, we're trying to make sure that the way that we're setting up goals, objectives, and milestones for the future are really based on where we want to be, not how we want to get there. So as an example, we want to create the most friction-free experience for our users. So that's not saying we need to remove any requirement to charge the device. However, removing the requirement to charge a device helps with removing friction from use of something. Yeah. So I think it's important that, any executive in the company, anybody who's making decisions and thinking about the future and kind of creating the future of the company, everybody has to be thinking that way because we're all in our own areas. We all have our own areas of expertise, and to be constantly questioning is part of the job because we're not following a template of another company that's existed. We're crafting an entirely new space, and not one person can do that. We have to all kind of be in our own respective spheres thinking and questioning each other too.
Yeah. It's intimidating, like knowing that no one's ever been there before. Like there's models for startups and hardware, software, and medical device and wearables, but really no one's done it like you. It's kind of scary. right?
I feel like I'm making you nauseous.
No, I'm thinking about our own experience with it, and I'm like, oh, the things that we try and predict. And it is scary. It's having that startup thing is because you're trying to line something up like 9 months from now, not knowing what the hell, right? So I can empathize
But it is
with
like
that experience.
it's scary. It can be daunting. But if you think about like all of those little decisions that have to be made and all the challenges that you have to overcome, like I just like to think about it as a moat. Like this is or a wall, down or up, whatever
You
way
gotta
you
get
want to think
across
about
the
it.
thing.
Okay, there's a thing that you're building, and
Yeah.
it's hard to build, and the opportunity that exists in building that thing is so big and exciting, and the impact that you can have in doing it is so big. And every time we face a challenge that we have to overcome, and maybe it's something that takes months to overcome, like I love that stuff because you're like, wow, that was, this isn't easy. Clearly it's not easy.
Yeah.
And so if you, rather than being intimidated by it, like it's almost like this huge opportunity to work on a problem that's so multifaceted that no one's done before.
Is one of the issues that the problems aren't always apparent? That's something that I like. It would be nice. Part of the challenge is figuring out what the hell the problem is, and like okay, lost the metaphor. Are you climbing the wall? Or are you building the wall? What are you trying to do here?
Well, are you or a moat?
Or the moat? Are you digging the moat?
Maybe there's a moat and then a wall and then another moat.
And then the castle. You want to get to the castle, right? You're storming the castle.
We're building the castle.
Yeah.
I think we're on that.
Or are we defending? Like I don't know where we are in the medieval metaphor right now. Let's say that we tell our team like this is where we want to go. I think some of the problem exists in not knowing what the problem is or what even the challenge is that we have to overcome. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's invisible. And sometimes, most of the time, it's unpredictable. Like the recent kind of market turn for SaaS companies. Who saw that coming? Maybe like Elon Musk saw that coming. We didn't really see that coming.
Yeah.
And so that provides all kinds of challenges for XYZ, right? And so the fundamental question I wrestle with is like, where are the problems coming from? And what are the problems actually? Like, what are the challenges that we even have to face?
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes you just kind of guess-ish what the problem is going to be or put it in a bucket of a model that sort of works for you.
Yeah.
And visualize it because it hasn't existed before, because no one's ever done this before.
Yeah, and usually, like, if you're kind of making those educated guesses, you're going to be closer, even if you're wrong that first time.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of understand the reasons that you're wrong and redirect. But it is, I think about decisions that we've made from a product standpoint over the course of the evolution of the company. And you have to start somewhere. But I think as an example, we never really understood how low friction the system had to be to really work. And you have to start somewhere, and the technology was at a certain point at some time, but there's just, if you can't get over that minimum level that needs to exist, people stop using it.
Yeah.
And so we had many issues over time where we had to just continue to iterate and reiterate. And we made all sorts of decisions that were wrong, but we kept getting closer. And now I feel like we've kind of crossed that barrier. And,
nice.
And it's a bit, it's different. It's different now to actually be at a point where we are scaling, we are growing, we're getting product out, people are using it.
Yeah.
They're using it consistently and over time. But it took a long time to get there because there's just a million ways to fail and a million ways to make people not want to use something.
Do you feel like, I don't want to say you've made it, but do you feel, put differently, like you feel like the business is humming now? Like you've gotten out of the morass, you've gotten out of the weeds a little bit, and you've kind of come up to a different level? The reason I ask that is because you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and they feel like they're never out of it.
No.
And then you talk to some who've built billion-dollar companies and they're just like, oh, it's been tough and it's been a grind and we're still in this problem. And you're like, what? You built this billion-dollar thing. So where do you perceive yourself to be at?
Yeah, I just think business is really hard in general.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and even for serial entrepreneurs who have been at it over and over again, they've had multiple successes. I just don't think you can ever get complacent and feel like your business is humming and that's just it.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many things happen. The world changes, the economy changes, the geopolitical situation changes, and you always have to be ready to change what you're doing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't ever feel like it's steady. Like things
Yeah.
just it will, or if it does, it's going to be short lived. You have to be always reinventing yourself, and so I do lose track of how far we've come because I tend to be thinking about, okay, we gotta achieve this milestone. This is what we gotta do, get it done, and then I'm focused on the next thing. I really have to spend time like celebrating wins.
Yeah.
Because I don't look in the rear view mirror that much.
Yeah.
And if I did go look at some of my original pitch decks of where I thought I was going to be,
That's funny.
it would have been a really bad company. Like the way that it was originally positioned. But so it's sometimes is good to look back at that and realize, oh, like a lot of really great decisions have been made. We've built an amazing team. The opportunity that continues to lie ahead of us is huge. We're already making impact. Like that's great, but there's so much work to be done. And like that feeling of the business is humming, I just don't think it will ever exist. I don't, because I'm always going to be focused
because
on
you
the
don't
next
want
thing.
it to, or like you feel like when it gets to that place, you'll reorient and take on a bigger challenge.
Yeah,
So you won't let it happen.
I don't think so. Unfortunately, this sounds like a very unsettling way to live, but
Yeah, I guess that's something I've thought a lot about. How do you cope with that? And like there's times when I crave just like normal routine.
Yeah.
Like a couple days. It doesn't last long. I
Yeah.
think I would get bored with that. But there's times when I really crave like predictability, and there's no such thing as a normal life. And people work hard across the board. There's stress, change, all that stuff. But I sometimes crave that because things change so quickly. So do you cope okay with that, or some people thrive in that? Like I need that change all the time and that like new challenge. When I conquer one, I got to go to the next one.
I think I do. I think I don't want it, but because I'm constantly trying to work to get out of that state to only put myself in that state again.
Okay, yeah, say that again because I think there's something really strong there. So say that again.
Well, I have this anxiety that drives me to get out of feeling like I have something to do. And then the second I do it, I'm trying to find more things to do. And then I give myself the anxiety of another list of things to do. Like I'm really good at that.
Yeah, so you have this like this chaos, and you have the anxiety of getting out of the chaos.
Yeah.
When you get out of I was this close to tying it back to the castle, but I can't do it. It's just, it's too much. There's too many layers. We're too deep. It's like Inception. We're in like a castle inside a castle. Once you get out of that chaos, that tornado, you step out of it, you kind of look for another tornado. Yeah. Okay.
It's not, it's just, I think I've known myself long enough to understand that.
Has it always been like that, or did entrepreneurship and did that kind of foster that?
No, I've always been good at creating lists for myself that are never ending. So that's it's just kind of,
because I think sometimes the startup environment kind of like I don't know if you think about how much you've changed, like as an individual, like you must have developed, grown, changed. There's core parts of one's personality that changed throughout the process of starting a company.
Oh yeah.
And I wonder if that's one of them, right? The like search for more challenge and chaos. The startup world definitely fertilizes that.
Oh, totally. I think it would actually be a really hard environment to exist in. It would be impossible if you didn't have some element of that. Like if you felt like you needed to be provided with the next steps.
Yeah.
Guided to the next steps versus just like, kind of driving yourself crazy creating them. But I think, I mean, I've learned so much, and I think in terms of just like my existence as an entrepreneur, I'm probably pretty unrecognizable from when I started the company. Like, I've learned so much in the process. It's been a huge growth opportunity for me and everybody else involved in this. But that tendency to kind of like always be working on what's next is something that I think, I look back at the first business I owned was, I had a jewelry company when I was a little kid.
Nice.
And did you know that?
I didn't.
Okay.
Let's get into that.
Okay. So I got really interested in beading and silversmithing as a kid.
What age? When are we
8.
talking? 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had received as a gift, it was like a fishing tackle box that was filled with beads.
Sweet.
And for whatever, I also, at the same time, I had a book that my aunt had given me called Fast Cash for Kids.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
And it was all sorts of ideas for making money.
Yeah.
And many of them weren't very good ideas.
All
but
legal.
They were all legal.
Yeah. Okay.
It was like lemonade stands and painted rocks.
Okay.
It was that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking I could just create jewelry for myself, or I could create jewelry and sell it to other people. And so I started doing that. And there was a craft fair that would happen once a year in Bragg Creek. I grew up outside of Calgary in a little town called Bragg Creek. And so they had this artisans fair. And so I started becoming really interested in creating jewelry for the purpose of selling it. And speaking of creating things to do, like I remember getting home from grade 3 and being like, I have so much to do. I have like, I had this schedule. I was trying to create jewelry to be prepared for the sale.
Yeah.
And it was just like it was a lot. Like but I created it myself. Like I could have not had that to-do list, but I was definitely like, okay, I got things to do. I got jewelry to create. So then I started getting into silversmithing. For Christmas one year, my parents bought me a course to actually learn silversmithing.
Whoa.
So I went into that. I was definitely the youngest person. It was like 60-year-old women and me. And learned basics of silversmithing and started to get really into that.
Like for jewelry, like
for
earrings
jewelry.
And pendants and.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So earrings, necklaces, you name it.
Yeah.
And then started getting some gigs to produce jewelry for made-for-TV movies and some TV shows.
Come on.
So,
when you were in grade 4 or 5.
I think I was grade 4 or 5 at the time.
You were getting jewelry. Okay. So you're making props, movie props.
It was,
like for people who are doing movies. And that's kind of like people don't know this about Calgary and area. Like there's a lot of movies shot because of the mountains and whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. So,
Damn.
And then when they would order whatever it was that they needed, they would order like 3 of them so they could make sure that if something happened to one of the pieces of jewelry, they wouldn't have some sort of continuity issue in the show.
Some backups.
So there was always multiple, so that any order just sort of doubled or tripled itself. So then I started getting interested in that. And
how are they putting in orders? Like what was your...
I think it was a phone call at the time.
How are you advertising?
I wasn't.
It was just word of mouth.
It was word of mouth.
It's like your margins were good. Like you didn't have a marketing burn.
No, exactly. No marketing spend.
Yeah.
But so that was my earliest experience as an entrepreneur.
That's
and
incredible.
it never really generated a whole lot, but it allowed me to have some spending money, and I would reinvest in more beads.
You remember how much money you made? Like what were your...
I think per order it was like a couple $100. They would
That's
when
decent.
It was the TV show stuff.
In grade 5, that's like you're like, I don't need any more. I'm good. I can retire. That's probably how that felt.
Yeah, my perception of what life costs at that time was pretty off.
Your expenses were low.
But yeah, so I think I've always sort of had that tendency and interest in entrepreneurship and creating new things, but the business is very different now.
The silversmith business.
Sensory and soul. Yeah. I needed some help with the sensory and souls. I wanted to make those myself.
Tried. And I wonder too if if that, like, I want to say this delicately. You didn't graduate out of medicine and surgery.
No.
And you didn't really leave it. Like you left it. You left being a surgeon, which I imagine there was a time when that was very scary because of how difficult it is to get into medical school. At least it was for me. And then residency, very difficult. You're in a very competitive residency. And then there's kind of a slow, like boiling the frog, kind of leaving that field. But I wonder if part of like you needed more excitement or something from the thing you were doing. Like I don't want to say you got bored in plastics, because that is a very intensive and really expansive field. But I wonder what the psychology of it was when you were picking this up and sort of leaving that behind. And those two things were kind of happening at the same time.
Yeah. And it did happen over time because
over many years.
The leave ended up being extended.
Okay.
Until the point where I really had to just make the decision to not be extending a leave. There is a path to potentially go back at some day, but I'm so invested in what I'm doing right now that's where the focus is. And I definitely wasn't bored at the time. Like, I was very much in the thick of my training, and there's like nothing boring about that. I loved it. I would have been very happy being a surgeon. I think what it came down to, though, is once you start a business, it's like it kind of becomes its own living thing. And you're like caring and feeding for that living thing. Yeah. And then you bring on other people to care and feed for that living thing. And people are putting their own hard-earned money into that thing. And there's been no point in time where I felt like the business was just humming along to the extent that I could just step back and go back to the other world. Like I'm very much holding pieces together of this living thing. Yeah. So it feels like a child, and
it's a good metaphor. Yeah.
It hasn't really been a decision, in that it's my level of responsibility to that thing is so high, and that I've brought on other people to that I have to see it through for them. Now that's just like the reality of a business. You look at the other side of it and the impact that we can have within the medical space and within patient care. Yeah. Those are the two things that really keep me going, and that made the decision, although difficult, the obvious decision.
Yeah. It seems so obvious now that you'll be able to impact millions of lives, and in a direct way, which is the coolest part. And as a surgeon, you may have impacted in a very direct way hundreds of thousands, maybe. I believe what you've started and grown with will just have such a massive impact beyond what you maybe could have accomplished as a surgeon.
In the case of success, it's like you definitely would be at that point. Like I mean, it's going to be hundreds of thousands, millions of people. That is the trajectory where we really are confident we're on now. Yeah. And it takes a little bit of craziness to think, oh yeah, we're gonna start from nothing and do that. Mm-hmm. But you have to believe that if you're gonna be putting your whole life's work into it.
No doubt. Okay, I want to do a little bit of a lightning round. Okay.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to hit you with one question at a time. How are we doing for time? What time is it?
It is 3 on the dot.
Oh, cripes. Okay. We usually try and keep it like, I don't know, we keep it tight like 45. So this is where I'm going to hit you with the lightning round.
Do you ever edit stuff out of it?
Not really. No.
Okay.
We'll send it to you so you can like see what's up. But I don't think there's anything edit-outable today.
Maybe some of that metaphor stuff. Took some time.
No, that's like the middle 30 minutes of the medieval Dungeons and Dragons time. We can.
I'm working on trying to clear the rights to Foo Bar still.
Send some releases. Okay, let's wrap up with lightning round. Best moment of your journey so far, entrepreneurial journey? The biggest you were like, oh man, that was awesome. Best moment.
These aren't lightning round questions. How am I supposed
I guess, is there a better way to classify this type of question? There's going to be like 3 in succession. So that's what I mean. Lightning round.
That's a big answer though.
Okay, go for it. Yeah. Let us, what's up?
So I was like at this all-time low going into some fundraising meetings.
Oh yeah.
And I ended up randomly being seated beside a modern day shaman on the plane down to San Francisco one time.
Okay.
And it was a very weird flight. We got into some really weird content, but I felt like I left that plane in this just completely different mental state. And I went into the meeting. The investor didn't invest, but I went into this meeting so much more psychologically prepared for that meeting that I have with any other investor meeting. And it was just like that feeling of, I think, realizing that my psychology was totally impacting any meeting I went into.
Yeah.
And I had that control.
Yeah. Like you can flip it either way. It could be negative energy,
I can make a
energy.
great meeting or I can make it horrible. You can't control everything, but realizing that my mental state was really contributing to the answers that I was getting back, and that if I was building this business, I was going to be in the right state for it.
That's very cool. I didn't expect that. It's awesome.
I didn't expect there to be a shaman sitting beside me on the plane either.
Or a lightning round. You didn't expect that either. Okay. Number 2 in the lightning round. What was the worst? What was the lowest point? The worst moment? Was it right before the shaman?
Pretty much, actually, which is why in comparison, everything was like so good.
Yeah.
So I had there was this long lead up to get an investor on board.
Early stage?
Very early stage.
Yeah.
This was really early. And it was like one of those moments where you feel like you have no options left. And we had put all of our eggs into this final basket of getting this investor on board. And they ditched last minute. And I spent the afternoon crying in a bush.
In a bush?
In a bush. Like I just had to get out because I had to get out of the office. I had to get out from it. So there was like a series of bushes in a hill by the office, and that was a pretty low.
Oh man, that sounds scary. Okay. Okay, third.
I'm answering
awesome
honestly.
Answer.
I could have told you something that wasn't true, but that was definitely the lowest.
Those are unvarnished, beautiful, authentic answers. I love that. Okay, this one's easier. Where are you going next? What are you most excited about next?
Honestly?
Yeah.
Some of the work that I'm looking forward to doing with other partners in expanding.
You don't have to say that, by the way.
But can I go there?
Of course. Yeah.
So, so with the product that we've been developing, we're very focused on, or we have been very focused on solving for the problem of diabetic foot complications and kind of getting into this vicious cycle of complication, amputation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in many cases, death. And that's about a third of the direct cost of diabetes care. So it's a big unanswered area of need. But if you look at the patient who's living with diabetes, that they're not just living with diabetic foot complications. Sure. They're living with the entire experience of what it is to live with diabetes, which means to manage many things concurrently. And we haven't given people the right tools to be able to do that effectively in a really kind of clean and simple way where everything's in one place. And they would traditionally have visits with a doctor, and then there's that everywhere in between that where care really happens.
Yeah.
And starting to bring all of the elements and pillars of diabetes care into one comprehensive digital system.
Yeah.
And I feel very strongly that mental health is like the linchpin to that entire system.
Yeah.
So bringing in considerations for mental health, mental wellness, diabetic foot management, and then, all of the other areas of diabetes care like blood glucose management, blood pressure management. There's kind of 6 key areas that we're focused on, but partnering to bring all of that together into one place where you can make that journey for somebody just a little bit easier,
Mhm.
and you can make it very clear what their connection point is to a provider at any point in time. And that can be kind of like the connective tissue between what was traditionally healthcare that kind of ignored where health happened. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm really excited about going next.
That is super exciting. And I love the where care happens, where health happens. It's the in between the doctor visits, which is something we don't really conceptualize, but it's so true.
Yeah.
And your group bringing all those disparate elements together, it's very cool. Exciting. Thanks for chatting today. Thank you for being an inspirational entrepreneur in our city for other physicians. I've always looked up to you. So thank you so much for just being that person that I'm like, she's doing it. I think we could do it too.
You
So that's
are
very
doing
cool. We are, to some extent, we are. So yeah, thank you for being that. I don't know if you consider yourself a leader in that like physician entrepreneur community. There's not really a community. There's just like a couple of us trying to do it.
Yeah.
But you've always been that person. So thanks for doing that.
Oh, well, thank you. I feel very much privileged to be a colleague in that space. There's the growing number of us. So that's,
Stay strong.
yeah.
Awesome.